Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Linda.
Hi.
You want to leave it?
Yeah, I was trying to.
So we're going to mute everybody just so we can kind of minimize those distractions. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. So thank you so much for joining us for the Caring for the Veteran Caregiver Virtual Conference. I am Candace Christensen, and I am the coordinator for the Caregiver Coalition. So we've really been looking forward to this Veterans Conference. We just had our first session, a few technical difficulties, but Bubba still shared some fantastic information, and I really enjoyed our time with him. And I'm also looking forward to the second session with Jennifer. But before we jump into that, I do have a few housekeeping items. The session is being recorded, and we're going to post it to our website and our YouTube channel for everybody to watch afterwards, and anyone that wasn't able to attend. We're going to keep all cameras and microphones except for those of our speakers off, just to minimize the distractions. We are using the chat box for questions. So at any point during the presentation, if you have a question, you can type that into the chat box and we will answer them once we reach the Q&A towards the end of the session. And in case we run into any technical difficulties, we are going to resolve them as quickly as possible. And we are using a newer feature on Zoom that allows us to enable captions during the workshops. So if you don't see the captions coming up on your screen right now, you can click at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar. It says more with the 3 little dots. If you click that, it's going to open up a new little window, and it has a few different settings there. You can hit show subtitle, and it'll come up with the subtitle at the bottom of your screen. Or if you see it and you don't want to, you can hit hide subtitle. There's also subtitle settings that'll allow you to change the size of those captions, so they might be easier to read. And you can also click view full transcript. It'll open up a new little window on the side that will let you see the full transcript as it comes up live. So we have some fantastic sponsors that we want to thank, and I have a really quick short message from a few of them.
How's everybody doing?
Hey guys!
Hi!
It's time to lean on each other.
All of you guys, so much great support.
And laugh with each other.
Cheers!
Let's do it together with caregiving chats and more. Come find us at aarp.org/near you.
My wife, I call her a drill sergeant. She gave me the inspiration to build myself up. I need to go on dialysis. Florida Blues, they gave my wife good information. What I ate, how she cooked, and everything. In fact, if I go to the store and buy something today, she'll get it and read it and say, you can't have this. And that's why I think I'm where I'm at today.
So we have our gold sponsors: Community Hospice and Palliative Care, Florida Blue, Baptist Health, Age Well Center for Senior Health, and Mayo Clinic, and also our renewing sponsor, AARP. All fantastic agencies and members of the coalition. Thank you for your support.
How's everybody?
I would like to turn it over, not to Earl, but to Andrea Spencer, one of our executive committee members. Andrea is going to introduce our next speaker.
Good morning. I'm Andrea Spencer, and I'm Vice President of Communications at ElderSource. And I'm a member of the executive committee. ElderSource is an area agency on aging and an aging and disability resource center. And we are very happy to be here today as an active member of the coalition. I wanted to spend just a couple seconds to talk about who we are and what we do. And as I mentioned, we're an area agency on aging, and we cover 7 counties in Northeast Florida. How you can access us is a few ways. Our helpline, which is 1-888-242-4464. Our helpline gets about 6,000 calls a month from individuals looking for information and resources and support on a whole host of things. So when in doubt and you think you're going to call about one item, you might find out that there's a lot of other things that ElderSource can help you with. And we're a nonprofit organization as well. Our website is myeldersource.org. And there we'll give just an overview, again, of who we are and what we do. There's a couple of programs which you might want to check out on the website or call our helpline. And we have a virtual caregiver support group. So there's a lot of caregivers out there who are unable to leave the home, make that extra trek down the road to join a support group. But we've got a group where you can join virtually, just like this. We have some great caregiver support through our T-Care program, which helps with caregiver burnout. And we also have telephone reassurance, which is a wonderful program that, you know, a senior who is looking for a friendly phone call. We've got volunteers that are trained and background checked, and they make those friendly calls, you know, a couple times a week to the volunteer and the senior that are matched. Just as a reminder that open enrollment is coming up in October, and our program called SHINE, Serving Health Insurance Needs of Elders. These volunteers are highly trained and background checked to understand all the ins and outs of Medicare. So it can be very, very confusing to navigate that system as well. If you or a loved one or a neighbor, friend, church friend might need some assistance with that. So again, welcome. And I have the pleasure of introducing Jennifer Jenkins. And she is a Wounded Warrior Project spokesperson and a local caregiver here in Jacksonville. In 2005, Jennifer's brother suffered a severe traumatic brain injury after being wounded in combat, and Jennifer had to leave her job to care for him. Jennifer has now become a national advocate for caregivers. She's been working with Wounded Warrior Project for the past decade, sharing her journey with audiences around the country to raise awareness about the challenges faced by our nation's wounded warriors and those who support and care for them. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer with the Wounded Warrior Project. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is absolutely one of my favorite events of the year. And even though we're together virtually, we are still together. And that's the most important part about today, is that we're here making an effort to support one another, whether that be virtually, whether it be in the chat, if we see somebody have a question that we know the answer to, or whether it's signing up for a comfort call or joining a virtual caregiver group after today's event. The title of my speech today is Finding Fortitude, and I have to tell you, I struggled with that as a caregiver for a long time. Andrea mentioned that I care for my younger brother, James, who was wounded in 2005. And for the better part of 10 years, I did that all on my own. Now, I know many of you here today are caring for someone all by yourself. And I want you to know that you're not alone, but it is important that you find ways to reach out, to learn how to ask for help, and to accept it when it's offered. That was my biggest challenge, was admitting that I couldn't do this caregiver life all by myself. I was recently at an event with Wounded Warrior Project, and I had the opportunity to meet a warrior who has lost a lot of his independence. He has a traumatic brain injury, amputations, and always has a good attitude. His caregiver was there supporting him from the back. And I asked him, I said, how do you keep this attitude going? And he shared this quote with me. I'm only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. Because I can't do everything, I will not refuse to do this something that I can do. And it really hit me, those words. Here's someone who has every reason in the world to stop engaging in life, to stop being strong for others, to be negative, to stay home. And yet they're out trying to make the best of life, trying to support others. And that as a caregiver, I was guilty. I was guilty of trying to do everything all the time for everybody, even knowing that I couldn't, setting myself up for constant failure. Now, it didn't start like that in the beginning. And I'm sure for many of you caregivers, it didn't start like that for you either. The most shocking thing about becoming a caregiver was the nature that it happened for me suddenly. My brother drove over an improvised explosive device and damaged his spine. He had damage to his brain. He's since had 20 surgeries to repair his body and will likely have more in the future. And so for me, in my early 30s, I found myself being a caregiver, but not really understanding what that meant and not really fully comprehending the lifelong commitment that it would take. I just jumped in the pool, both feet first. It wasn't for several years that until I realized what was actually happening to my life. Now, how many of us, when our loved ones gets a diagnosis or begins showing signs of age, or perhaps is wounded in an accident or combat like my brother was, is that we don't have time to really think about a plan. We put ourselves into making sure our loved one is cared for. Whether that means learning about neurology, which I did. I mean, I think I might deserve an honorary degree. Some of you probably deserve honorary degrees too. But I also had to learn about the military, all those acronyms. I had to learn about Social Security, about VA benefits, about how the transition was going to take place for my brother leaving active duty and then becoming part of the civilian world. And when we were in the military hospital, it was kind of safe, right? We had other people to rely on. But when we got home, we were all by ourselves. My brother had all kinds of issues, and I know many of you are taking care of loved ones that have cognitive impairment. Perhaps they have an aging disease, and you know what it means to have to be there for them, standing vigil, making sure they're safe 24/7. And taking care of my brother was just like that. With maybe one exception, I had known older relatives that needed care, needed looked after, but I didn't know anybody who was really young that needed that. Taking care of somebody younger, like my brother, has crazy challenges. They want to do everything for themselves and their bodies don't always cooperate. That was the case with my brother. The doctor said he needs to have someone with him 24/7. And well, if that's fine if it's me, except when do I sleep? When do I go to the grocery store? Forget about doctor's appointments for me or going to the gym. I could never fit that in. And like many of you, I didn't tell the people closest around me how I was feeling or what all of this pressure and responsibility was doing to my personal mental health. It's hard when somebody says, oh, you're doing such a good job. You're really taking care of your brother so well. He's so lucky to have you. It's hard to hear those words, but on the inside, also feel, well, a little bit guilty because you want to have your own life, because you miss having the time for yourself. And so in those moments when you could reach out to a neighbor, a loved one, maybe a member of your church and say, I appreciate you saying that. And I am doing my very best, but I can't keep doing this by myself. What do we do instead? Well, we say, thanks. Yeah, everything's great. Everything's fine. At least that's what I did. I've since learned to stop answering the question, how are you doing? With the answer, okay. Because sometimes I'm doing amazing. Today is a great day. And other times I'm struggling. And I've learned that if we're honest with people and we tell them about the times when we're struggling, that they can really make a difference for us. And if they aren't able to help us personally, hands-on, at least we know that they are more understanding of our situation. Now, when my brother returned home, I did all the things that we do to get our homes ready. I made sure that all the furniture was moved out of the way, that we had a calendar with a big schedule, so I knew when his physical therapy appointments were, when all of our appointments were going to take place. My brother had a care plan. I created a giant binder sorted by the different conditions that he has, lists of doctors, I had phone numbers if something were to happen, who to call, what to do. I made all of those preparations to make sure that no matter what, my brother would be cared for. He did have an end of life plan. We made sure that we had guardianship papers in there, our power of attorney. But I didn't do any of that stuff for myself. And I imagine that there are caregivers on the call today who haven't done any of that stuff for yourself, who don't have a medication list for yourself, who don't have time built into the calendar so that you can take a walk or so that you can do some stretching or do any of those self-care things that we're so heavily invested in talking about these days. And it began to weigh on me really so heavily, like a weight of bricks just sitting on my shoulders. And I didn't know where to put all that weight. I didn't know what to do with my feelings about taking care of my brother, not knowing when it was going to end, and also having guilt because I felt that way in the first place. But again, I was really busy sitting vigil, making sure my brother was cared for. I started having chest pains about 5 or 6 years into my caregiving journey. At first, I thought maybe it was something I ate, but it was persistent. And there were times when my chest would feel so tight and I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, and I didn't know what to do. So I did make an appointment with my doctor. I went in and talked to her, and she told me that I had high blood pressure. And she gave me a prescription and told me that I needed to start going to the gym. But what she didn't do, what's not set in place for our care providers, for our medical professionals, she didn't sit down with me and talk to me about caregiver stress, to talk to me about how the time and energy and emotion I was putting into being a caregiver was actually having a toll on my own body because I was ignoring it. So I took her advice, even though it should have also included a plan for me to get some support, either a caregiver group, talking to a mental health professional. There were so many things that I needed but wasn't getting. But I did take the advice that she gave me. I started taking the medication and I started going to the gym. But that meant leaving my brother by himself. I didn't really understand what home health care was at the time. I didn't have a background in caregiving. My background was in marketing and radio. And so I didn't know how to ask for support for in-home care. And many of you have experience dealing with this, whether you get care at the VA or you get care in the community. Our medical professionals are busy. They're overwhelmed. And there isn't a checklist. There's no set script for them to talk to a caregiver and a veteran about their care. And oftentimes you may have 5 minutes with that provider face-to-face. You can't fit it all in. So even though there were programs available, I didn't know about them. And so I made the difficult choice when I had to go to the grocery store or go to the gym to leave my brother by himself. But I always left him, completely set up. How many of you leave the house and you leave your veteran completely set up? You've left snacks, you've left water, the remote control is where they can reach it. They have no reason to get up and do anything for the hour and a half that you may be gone, except they do. Now, I would always make sure that my brother had his phone with him. And one time when I was at the gym, unfortunately, he fell going to the kitchen to get a cup of coffee, of all things. And when he fell, he hurt himself. Now, he'd fallen and hurt himself before, but he called me from his cell phone. Thankfully, it was in the front of his robe pocket. And he said, "Jen, I'm lying on the kitchen floor and I think I've broken my arm." And I told him, just stay right where you are. I did not want him trying to get up or move, cause more damage. And so I called 911 and I told my brother I would meet him at the local medical center. I would have the ambulance come and get him and I would meet him there. Now, we had done this before. And actually, my brother had been taken to the hospital once when he tripped outside his apartment and hurt his ankle. And so they took him to the medical center, and I picked him up and took him to the VA, which was where he was getting all of his care at the time. And I remember my brother has a significant cognitive impairment. And so for our caregivers here, you know that sometimes when you talk to someone with a cognitive impairment or memory disease, they don't always answer you or give you the information in the correct manner. And so there can be a lot of misconstrued information. I rushed away from the gym to meet my brother at the hospital, and I was crazy surprised to find that he was sitting outside on a bench all by himself. His arm was stabilized to his body, but he hadn't gone inside to get an x-ray. He hadn't had any pain medicine. He hadn't seen a doctor. And what I figured out after I began talking to him was that he had told the EMTs that his sister was coming to pick him up to take him to the VA. And he presents as an adult, as somebody who has all their capacities, who can make all the decisions. And so they did exactly what he asked them to do. They left him there for me to pick up. I was so devastated. And I had so much pent up emotion, frustration, anger, to be honest, resentment, guilt, hurt from just still the trauma of him getting blown up, that I didn't even go inside to say, hey, we need help out here. That's how bad I was at asking for help. Nope. Instead, I thought I could do everything all by myself all the time, and I just started loading him up in the car. A nighttime security guard saw us, and she came over to help, and she had talked to my brother a little bit while he was waiting for me, and she saw him wearing his infantry hat, saw our Purple Heart license plates. She put two and two together, and she began crying, and she said, your brother doesn't deserve this. Now, how many times have we felt that way about our veteran? When they're down, when things are rough. And I remember looking at her and I said, I don't deserve this either. I can't tell you the name of that lady. I wish I could. I'd love to thank her for her care and concern that night, for helping me get my brother in my car. I'd love to reach back out to her and let her know that we're okay, although it took a while to get there. After we left that hospital and we made our way towards the VA, rain began coming down, and it's that kind of rain that your windshield wipers can't keep up with. And I remember it was dark and traffic lights on the oncoming traffic were just blurring into one great big long line as my windshield wipers went back and forth. And that great big long line just felt like my whole life leading up to that night. Taking care of my brother, trying to deal with all the red tape, wondering if I was ever going to have a life for myself, if I was ever going to have a job again. And I remember gripping the steering wheel super tight so we wouldn't wreck. And then I began to think, well, what if we did? What if we went into that oncoming traffic and all of this was over for both of us? All this pain was gone. I remember imagining there might be a headline in the newspaper that said, Purple Heart recipient dies on icy road. And that would be it. At least my brother would be remembered with honor that he deserved. Now, a few weeks before that night, we had attended an event with Wounded Warrior Project, and it was a very reluctant attendance, I have to tell you. I don't have to tell you, you're caregivers. But you know, when people invite you places and you really don't want to go because traveling with your veteran is tough, you might be like us and have a breathing machine and have medication. We have medication that has to be kept at a certain temperature. And then you have sharps. You have to think about sharp disposal. And we have a service dog and he has food. And, you know, there are all these reasons not to go places. But Wounded Warrior Project told us that it was going to be a good time. I went because my My brother needs to be around other veterans. It's very healthy for him. We met Wounded Warrior Project years before in the Army hospital. You may have seen Wounded Warrior Project commercials where they give the wounded service members a backpack at the bedside. They talk to them about benefits, talk to them about what support they might need. And I remember when my brother got the backpack, I felt so proud for him. They gave him a t-shirt that had the logo, Wounded Warrior Project logo on it. And I thought, well, that's so nice. Those people will know that he was hurt in the war. But I was so overwhelmed with being a caregiver that I didn't go beyond that. I didn't tell anyone how I was feeling or what I needed. And even at the weekend before that night on the road, even at that event with Wounded Warrior Project, I didn't really tell anybody what was going on in our life. I just bottled it all in. And the best I could do that weekend was not terrible. How many of you have gone to an event? Maybe it's a family event, maybe it's, something in your community. And the best that you could do was not terrible. Yeah, me too. I went and sort of smiled and went along with things. I did do one thing before we left. I agreed to join a private Facebook group with other attendees that were spouses, family members, veterans, because someone said, well, we're going to share pictures. But I noticed in that group, after we left the event, that people were doing more than sharing pictures. They were asking each other questions about veteran service organizations, asking about benefits, asking about resources. Where could we get support for this need? Asking each other for prayer. And I can't tell you why I did it. Probably having all that built up inside of me needed a way to come out. But that night before I went to meet my brother at the hospital, I went in that private group and left a message. I just wrote a comment. And a veteran who had been at the event with us and was in the group, who had also been in Iraq and been wounded by a rocket and needed over a dozen surgeries for his body. He read my message for exactly what it was, which was a cry for help. And as we made our way down that road and I was about to make a fateful decision for my family, my phone rang. And on the other end was that veteran. And all he said was, I want you to tell me where you two are because I'm coming to help. And by the time we got to the VA parking lot, he was there. And he scooped us both up, just like the Wounded Warrior Project logo. He was the soldier on the bottom carrying us. And he got my brother medical attention. My brother needed 4 hours of surgery to repair a shattered elbow from his fall. And he also got me emergency mental health intervention that's available in emergency rooms. And he didn't stop there. That's the thing about our veterans and most of you caregivers. We don't stop until the mission is finished. And so this veteran, a Marine veteran, made some calls that night to Wounded Warrior Project. And he told them there was a family in crisis and what could they do to help. And so Wounded Warrior Project immediately started working to make sure my brother was supported, but also figure out what they could do to help me. And they set me to spend time with 19 other women in a retreat kind of like setting. And these women were the mothers of service members wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan. Truly the only people in this world that know what it's like to be me. And we spent our time together with mental health professionals. We practiced a little yoga. We learned about relaxation breathing. And they educated us on something called caregiver burnout or caregiver stress. And I know many of you have probably experienced this in your life. It's something that if taken care of early, you can manage. And if you let it get too far, you can end up in a dark place like I did. We also worked on care plans for ourselves, which was amazing, and made appointments with mental health professionals and did all the things that we needed to do, set everything up to take care of ourselves, because it's just like when you're on an airplane. If you don't put your oxygen mask on first, how are you going to help the person next to you put their oxygen mask on? Well, before we left that retreat, we also had a brief from Wounded Warrior Project on programs and services, and I'm going to tell you about some of them today. Wounded Warrior Project took a look individually at the benefits we were receiving. Wounded Warrior Project is an accredited VSO. It's on the list. Bubba gave us a great resource, so you can certainly look up VSOs there, and I encourage you to do so. It's really important to get somebody that's accredited. And so they took a look at the benefits and took a look at all of the support that was available. And we weren't actually getting the support that we needed in our home. There were home health care opportunities for us. There's a caregiver program that was available to me, and both through the VA, through the state, and even local resources. So we have a local resource here that can help you find and navigate what's available for your family. They also taught me the importance of raising a white flag and asking for help, and then accepting it when it's offered. Because sometimes when we get desperate and overwhelmed, we may say, well, I need this and I need that, and my veteran needs this. But then we don't hear the offer that's given to help us, or we don't accept it when it's given. So I'm going to make an offer to you today that if you need help with your veteran, please share that. You can share it in the chat. You can follow up with Candace. You can follow up with me. But the most important thing is to get you connected to the support and services that you need, because that's truly the one thing that made a difference in my family's life. Before I left that retreat, I also found out about Wounded Warrior Project programs, and one of them is called the Independence Program, which provides support for post 9/11 veterans who've been severely wounded and they're young, they're too young for nursing facilities, and that's not age appropriate, but they need to have independence and care at home like my brother. And so with a combination of support now from the VA, from the state, from Wounded Warrior Project, our lives look completely different. My brother lives on his own. He's able to can help you find and navigate what's available for your family. They also taught me the importance of raising a white flag and asking for help, and then accepting it when it's offered. Because sometimes when we get desperate and overwhelmed, we may say, well, I need this and I need that, and my veteran needs this. But then we don't hear the offer that's given to help us, or we don't accept it when it's given. So I'm going to make an offer to you today that if you need help with your veteran, please share that. You can share it in the chat. You can follow up with Candace. You can follow up with me. But the most important thing is to get you connected to the support and services that you need, because that's truly the one thing that made a difference in my family's life. Before I left that retreat, I also found out about Wounded Warrior Project programs, and one of them is called the Independence Program, which provides support for post 9/11 veterans who've been severely wounded and they're young, they're too young for nursing facilities, and that's not age appropriate, but they need to have independence and care at home like my brother. And so with a combination of support now from the VA, from the state, from Wounded Warrior Project, our lives look completely different. My brother lives on his own. He's able to make decisions with the support of professionals and a whole team that cares for him, including myself. But I have a lot more time on my hands now because I'm getting help. And it took me about 6 months to accept the people coming into our home to help us, to figure out a way to train them, to acclimate them to our environment, to the system that I had set up. You know, it's important for the people that support you in your home and care for your veteran. It's important for them to follow your protocol, I guess, right? It's your home. They need to follow your schedule and the system that you've set up, because for many of us caregivers, we have set up an amazing system. And I took me about 6 months to get there. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like somebody just showed up at my house and then the next day I had all this time on my hands. But after we got situated, I started realizing there might be some opportunity for me to grow. And that's when Wounded Warrior Project told me that they had a program called Warriors to Work, but it's not just for warriors, it's for their caregivers too. So they helped me with my resume, which had a huge gap that I didn't know how to explain. And they helped me actually put caregiving on my resume. It turns out caregiving is an amazing employment experience, whether you get paid or not. And all the things that I had done as a caregiver really make me a valuable employee to an organization. And beyond that, they helped me find a volunteer opportunity so that I could sharpen my skills. I took some online classes so that PowerPoint and Excel wouldn't be foreign to me. And they also taught me how to better communicate with those around me, including my brother, my son, so that we could be a family again, you know, not just a caregiver and the patient. And all of this has really led to a whole new life for me. I was very young when I became a caregiver, and I still had goals. I still had dreams and opportunities that I wanted to fulfill. And I have been able to spend time working on myself now. That night on the icy road is getting further and further in my rearview mirror. And over the last few years, I've been working full time. I've met a wonderful man and gotten married. And I'm also expecting a baby in a couple of months. So I'm really blessed and have a lot of gratitude for all the people that helped us along the way. Not just at Wounded Warrior Project, but people at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and people who volunteer their time, like making the comfort calls, or people who have done Meals on Wheels when my brother had surgery and we weren't able to get out to the store. I mean, it's just been amazing the number of people that have helped us. Now, I will not win Mother of the Year if I don't show you this picture. I know when you see this picture, you see two brave Americans who would give their life for anybody in this call, anybody in this country. But, you know, when I look at this picture, I see, you know, two young boys that trusted me to raise them and take care of them, and who know that I would do anything as a caregiver for them. Now, we've got a couple of questions, so I want to get to those before I move into the next part of my presentation. Yes, the Independence Program at Wounded Warrior Project is actually open to service-connected post 9/11 veterans, whether they've been wounded in combat, whether they were in a car accident, whether they had a stroke. There are so many different ways that our veterans have been hurt, have experienced trauma, have the need for caregiving. And so if you need more information about the Independence Program, you can connect me. I'm going to put my email. I almost wrote my maiden name because I haven't been married that long. I'm going to put my email in the chat here. And you can email me and I'll get you connected to the Resource Center where they can make a referral for you. So I wanted to get back to what you can do now. So what can you do if you're experiencing these things like myself and you don't know what to do? Maybe this is the group of mothers that I spent time with at that retreat. I hadn't looked at this picture in a really long time until a few months ago, because there's so much emotion wrapped into this. You know, when we start dealing with our grief as caregivers, we grieve the person that our veteran was. We grieve the life that we had. Sometimes we do anticipatory grieving, where we think about what it's going to be like if our veteran passes away. I think about all those feelings in the early stages when I was working through them, and these were the women that were there to support me. And it's emotional. It's emotional to go back. But this peer group and other peer groups that I have joined since have made all the difference in my life. And I want to make sure that each of you know that while a peer group may not sound like the thing that you need, sometimes it's the best thing that you can do for yourself, because peer groups can be a very safe place to share those raw emotions. You know, there's a whole wheel of emotions as caregivers. We feel positive. We try to be hopeful. But sometimes we give away all that hope to our loved one, and then we are left feeling empty. And so the peer groups, virtual peer group doesn't sound like the thing that you maybe want to do, but give it a try. And if you try one and it doesn't really kind of give you all the feels, try another one. I'm going to give you a resource to find some here in just a moment. But before I do, I have a challenge. I guess maybe more of a request. Before I left the retreat, the other mothers and I made a pledge to one another that no matter what, we would be there for each other, and that we would reach out 24/7, 365. And so I want to ask each of you to send a message to somebody in your life that you care about. Phone calls have brought me terrible news. A phone call told me that my brother had been wounded. A phone call also saved my life. And had that veteran not reached out to me that night, I'm not sure if we'd be here right now. But it's so easy for us to assume that the people in our life know what we're going through. And the truth is that people in our life feel like they need permission to be a burden. So I want you to send this message to somebody that you care about. You can text it, you can send it in Snapchat, you can write it on the back of a postcard and put it in the mail. But all it needs to say is, I'm here for you 24/7, 365. Dear best friend from high school, dear daughter, dear my old boss, whoever you would want to call you if they were in a dark place, if they were driving down a dangerous road about to make a fateful decision like I did. Now that person is going to get your message and they're going to say, oh my gosh, I'm here for you too. If you're lucky, they'll send you that emoji with the 3 hearts, the kissies. That's my favorite. I want you to save that person's number in your favorites, because the truth is, as caregivers, we want to help everybody else, but there are times when we need help too. And sometimes we forget who it is that we can reach out to. This person is going to reply and say, you're the best, I'm here for you too. Save that number. So if you ever need help, if you're ever in a dark place, you know somebody that you can reach out to. Now, it's hard to talk about having thoughts of suicide. I have to tell you, I would never in a million years have thought I would share my story with complete strangers about wanting to end my own life. But the most important thing is that somebody who was trained in suicide prevention awareness, like that veteran who was in the group, the most important thing is that they knew what to look for, and they got me connected to help. And you can connect someone to help too if you have a feeling, or even if you just have a question about suicide prevention. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available 24/7, 365. You can even text them now. You can text 741-741. That's the way to get a hold of them if you aren't up to speaking to someone. You can save this number in your contacts on your phone so you can find it. But I actually have another trick for you. You can ask Alexa to call it. You can tell Siri to call it. You can say, hey, Google, call the National Crisis Hotline, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and they'll do it automatically for you. You can teach your veteran how to do that as well. So I want you to know that that's available. And lastly, if you have feelings of thoughts yourself, I want you to know It's not abnormal for caregivers to feel desperate and alone. And the most important thing that you can do is to get help. Do not feel like someone is going to judge you. Someone's going to come and take your veteran away. Or take you away from your veteran. The most important thing is that you call and talk to someone and make a plan to stay safe. So let's move on now to some of the programs at Wounded Warrior Project. I'm going to share my screen with you here. There's often a lot of questions about who Wounded Warrior Project serves, and our mission is to serve service members who've been wounded, ill, or injured during their service while they were serving after September 11th. Well, as we said before, we support warriors whether they've had an appendectomy, that they had a stroke during the surgery, or whether they're like my brother and they drove over an IED, everything in between. And also invisible wounds. You do not have to have a physical disability to be served by Wounded Warrior Project. But something that I didn't realize is that Wounded Warrior Project also serves caregivers and their families. There's a ton of programs for families and caregivers, like the Warriors to Work program that I use, but many, many others, including support retreats, peer groups, lots of activities that you can engage in separate from your veteran and together. It's all free. There's no membership fee to be part of Wounded Warrior Project. You need to visit the Resource Center, or you can call the Resource Center. I'm going to type those in you can even email them. I'm going to type those into the chat right now so that you have them. And also I want to mention that the Resource Center is not just for post 9/11 veterans. The 20 programs and services that Wounded Warrior Project provides directly are for post 9/11, but our Resource Center is open to anyone. And we help veterans and caregivers find lots of resources like service dog organizations or family counseling, or getting assistance with meal delivery, or anything that you might be struggling with. Call Wounded Warrior Project. We have nearly 2,500 vetted resources in our database. So these are organizations across the country that provide services. So also, this is an important note, some of you know organizations that support veterans, and they should be registered in our database because we get hundreds and hundreds of calls every day. And if they're in our database, we can help connect you to the veterans that need them. No one organization can do anything. So that's why our Resource Center is just so amazing. And you can visit our website. This is all on there. I just put the phone number for the Resource Center and their email in the chat. That's the best way to get started. And you do need to be registered to receive the direct support and services, but you can call the Resource Center anytime that you need something. And I'm going to share my screen again here. Here's the website. I just want to show you how you get in. You can go up to how we help, and then right here, it's got the phone number, the hours that the Resource Center is open. And all of this was made available. All my PowerPoint slides were made available by Candace. So those would have been in your confirmation email. And you can also connect with me afterwards if you have any questions about this. Now, one of the things that you're going to get if you register is you're going to get a weekly newsletter. You and your spouse, you and your veteran, whether they're your spouse or not. I'm obviously wasn't married to my brother when I first started working with Wounded Warrior Project, but the caregiver and the veteran both receive their own copy of the newsletter. You can search through that newsletter for events that are local, live, in person, but you can also find virtual events. We do lots of things for caregivers like candle making and coffee chats and book clubs and everything that you can imagine. So I want to encourage you when you register to check that newsletter, because it does change every week. You can look by zip code or you can search by virtual. And then I want to talk to you also today a little bit about another organization that I work with called the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. As I said before, no one organization can do everything for all veterans. Remember that quote, but we can do some things, and we should do the things that we can do. Wounded Warrior Project is a proud supporter of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. They've been a community partner for a number of years, and we help fund also some of their programs. Hidden Heroes is open, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation's program is open to every caregiver of every veteran, no matter what era, no matter what disability. And you go to their website, which is at hiddenheroes.org. I'm going to put it in the chat here. And join the community so that you can sign up. And then you can have access to not only their peer support group, which is amazing. It's an online community. It's a Facebook group, private vetted Facebook group called Hidden Heroes Caregiver Community. I was very proud to be the administrator of this Facebook group for several years. I made lots of connections, learned so much from the other caregivers in the group, men, women, older caregivers, younger caregivers. But the most wonderful thing about this group is just the unconditional support that you receive. There's almost 3,000 members, and you can safely ask anything. It is moderated by the foundation, so it's a safe place. And it's one of the benefits of registering with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, also free. But when you're registered, you will receive notification about programs. And there's a very important program I want to tell you about today called Respite Relief. Now, how many of us could use somebody to go to Walgreens and pick up some of our supplies, or stay with our loved one while we go to the gym, maybe help us organize a couple of closets, do some meal prep? We all could, right? And that's what Respite Relief is all about. Respite Relief will provide in-home care for you at no cost. There's a brief application at the hiddenheroes.org website. It's hiddenheroes.org/respite. And you can get 24 hours. You could go away for the night if you wanted, or you could use 4 hours every Saturday for 6 weeks so that you can get caught up online. It's an amazing program. Other programs that the Elizabeth Dole Foundation delivers includes online yoga, which you can see here, which is very popular. And believe it or not, 30 minutes of group virtual yoga can actually help you relax. Something else that I want to tell you just real quickly before I wrap up and take in any more questions. There are special programs throughout the year that you'll receive if you register via email. You'll receive information about. The Elizabeth Dole Foundation does do some grants at around the holidays for caregivers who are experiencing financial difficulty. You also will receive special invitation to events like with the VA where you can ask questions, which I know is really important. And so I want to encourage everyone to visit woundedwarriorproject.org, visit hiddenheroes.org, and remember how important it is to ask for and accept that help when it's offered. I'm going to leave you with a second quote. This is also Edward Everett Hale. I had to do some research after I heard that first quote, and it struck me so closely. And it turns out this man must have been a caregiver, because he sure understood what our lives are like, even though he lived almost 200 years ago. But he encouraged us to look up and not down, look out and not in, and definitely look forward and not back, and always lend a hand, which is what we do every single day. And I want to thank each of you for being just the absolute amazing caregivers that you are, because without all the things that you do, your veteran wouldn't be where they are today. They may not be here at all. And so from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for what you're doing, and I want you to know you're appreciated. We've got about 5 minutes. So if anybody has questions, now's the time. You can ask me anything. I give speeches all over the country to middle schoolers all the way up to elder care facilities. So there's probably nothing I haven't been asked. But if you have a question and you don't feel comfortable asking it in the chat, you can certainly email me. I put my email up there. Somebody thanked me for sharing my story. And I want to say this. When I got on the other side of all that pain, and I started working with some professionals and really figuring out how I was going to be a caregiver for life, how I was going to get through this caregiver life, I realized that if I didn't tell people what I went through, that they would think they were alone, just like I did, and how important it might be if I told them, you know, even when you're feeling absolutely like you're at the end of your rope and the knot's coming out, there are people to help you. And I hope, you know, that this helps you sharing my story, but it also helps me. It's a big part of what gets me through the day. So thank you guys so much for having me here. And please do reach out if you need anything at all. We're here to support you.